Okay, let's introduce the first speaker. In fact, this man needs no introduction.
I've always wanted to be introduced like that. Okay. A wise man once told Spider-Man that with great power comes great responsibility. Who's heard that before? Yeah, it's a bit cliche, but it's got some real practical applications. If you run a company, run it ethically. You have money, spend it wisely. If you get superpowers, fight for good, not evil. Yeah. We all have a lot of power. The power of our choices, our words, our actions. But how are we supposed to be responsible with them? Well, it helps to define responsibility. Responsibility can look like it's about doing the right thing, but I think there's more. I think to be responsible is to recognize your part in something. That's scary. Taking responsibility is scary. And what a lot of us do to deal with that is to stop being so responsible. Or to put it another way, to stop recognizing our part in our lives. To basically remove ourselves from the situation. It's like when we don't want to admit that we're scared of change. One way around that is to pretend the reason we're not changing is simply because we can't. It's like our choice isn't even part of the equation. As if we're just some small part in this grand scheme which leaves us with no power in our lives. That's not always easy to avoid, especially when we don't realize we're doing it. Because it's so easy to do that it can become second nature until we're not really living our lives anymore. The thing is, when you stop recognizing your part in your life, you lose any power to change it. So let's put this in context. Here are some phrases so many of us say, usually when we're avoiding making some kind of change in our lives. There are a couple of phrases I often hear, and people often say, I'd love to do that, but I just don't have the time. Or, that sounds great, but I just don't have the money. And I've heard these in so many different ways. I don't have time to exercise properly. I don't have time to read. I would buy that, but just don't have the money. But let's look at these phrases a bit more closely. I don't have the time implies that our time is managed and governed by some unknown force, or it's handled by someone else completely. And the same thing is true of money. See, in this situation, we've removed ourselves from the situation. And in doing that, we've lost any power to make any kind of change in it. And it becomes this perpetual cycle. Sometimes we say, I don't have the money, as a quick way of saying, it's not in the budget I set for myself. But when we phrase it in this vague and irresponsible way, we don't have to admit that the choice was ours. And the real danger comes in when we start genuinely believing that we don't have that choice anymore. Another phrase I often hear people say is, well, they say, usually when we're taking advice on something. But, like they say pineapples are good for you should eat 3 a day or whatever. But who are they exactly? This phrase carries that same helpless undertone. And I see it in 2 ways. If you don't acknowledge who gave you the advice, you don't have to hold them accountable if anything goes wrong. Secondly, if you don't attribute your advice to any specific person, no one can blame you for taking their advice. It wasn't your fault, you were just listening to them. It's an easy way to just drift through life and wait for someone else to solve all your problems for you. But this has been pretty depressing so far, but here's the good bit. We know this phrase, with great power comes great responsibility, but this is awesome. It works the other way around. With responsibility comes power. When you claim responsibility for something in your life, you claim the power to change it. How does that work exactly? Right? We start by becoming aware of the unconscious non-decisions we make all the time. So I'll get you started. We'll start with language. If you find yourself saying, I don't have the time, replace that with, my priorities are. So my priorities are feeding my cat, checking my emails, handing my essays. Exercise isn't one of them. This won't make you do exercise, but acknowledge that it's your choice to prioritize it if you want to. Again, if you find yourself saying, I don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or I can't afford it, replace it again with my priorities are. So my priorities are occasional nights out, my car, and a TV license. Organic food isn't one of them. This won't give you more money, but it will acknowledge your choice in the matter and the power that comes with that. If you find yourself saying, well, they say, actually credit your source. So I read in Tuesday's Metro that pineapples are good for you. It was Dave who told me not to come to Ignite Cardiff tonight. On some level, this will acknowledge your choice to believe the Metro over, say, like the Big Issue, or to listen to Dave even though he sounds like a bit of a dick. These are only small actions to take, but they're the beginning of liberating yourself from the delusion that someone else is in charge of your time, your money, your information, your happiness, your life. I mean, there are so many other ways in which we remove ourselves from our lives, stop recognizing it, and lose any power to change it. But I've only got 5 minutes, so you'll have to work the rest out yourself. But I'll say this, I've met a lot of miserable people who love to moan. And the reason they're miserable is always because of some other person, someone else. They usually shrug their shoulders and say, well, I can't help it, can I? I don't have time to do things any other way. I'm just doing what they say you've got to do. They're not taking responsibility for their happiness, and so they don't have any power over it. But this is your life. Don't wait for someone else to take responsibility for it. Claim it yourself, claim your power, claim your happiness, and shape your life. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Linus Harrison, who's kindly donated the healing box tonight.